right, everybody, let's go ahead and get started. Before I introduce our two speakers today, just a couple of housekeeping items. First thing is we will be sending out a follow-up email with the link to the replay of the webinar. So just keep an eye out for that in your inbox. And we will have some time for questions at the end. So if you look at your GoToWebinar console, there is a section where you can click on questions and a little questions pane will pop up and you can actually type questions in there. So just feel free to type in your questions as we're going through, and then we'll take a few minutes to answer those at the end. And just want to thank everybody again for joining us. Hope you guys are safe and hopefully you're staying cool in the month of August. I know here in Austin, Texas, it is very, very hot right now. So hopefully you're somewhere cool and shady and relaxed and ready to hear about audit intelligence. So with that, I'm going to introduce our two speakers. Our first speaker is Dave Savell. He's our General Manager of Field Ticket Operations. He's a 33-year veteran of the oil and gas technology industry, and he's had a number of roles in technology development and operations, including support, sales management, marketing, and development. In 2000, Dave left Halliburton and co-founded Digital Oilfield, running U.S. operations from its inception, and was on hand for the first deployment of OpenInvoice, something I'm sure that you guys have all heard of before. And then our second speaker is Don Hofer. He's our Solutions Director for Business Automation. Don supports the sales channel as well as the technical interface between customers and the Business Automation Product Development Organization here at Enverus. He has more than 29 years of experience working in the oil and gas industry, and he's held various positions since 1993, including technical support and managing Landmark Graphics North America Support Center before managing the drilling technical sales team. In 2004, he joined Digital Oilfield, which was the company that developed OpenInvoice. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Dave and Don.
Thanks very much, Susie. And thank you to everyone in the audience. Have a look at what the webinar contents are. We'll talk about current market challenges and implications. Talk about why Enverus and why Enverus can actually help resolve those issues. We'll talk about audit intelligence. We have a very interesting use case, and then Don will give a solution overview, so you can get a feel for just what the technology does and how it functions. So first off, fraud and overbilling are critical issues for oil and gas companies. They account for tens of millions of dollars of losses annually for individual E&P companies. And low value, high volume activities are a feature of the shale boom. These are perfect conditions for accidental overbilling and frankly, for service companies to take advantage of those issues. So when you look at just what is the size and magnitude of this issue, the energy sector is second in losses to fraud versus all other sectors of business and industry, except for financial services and banking. And typically 24 months is the average duration of billing fraud before it is actually detected. 60% of the proactive prepayment data intelligence and assessment provides a 60% reduction in losses due to fraud. So it's 60% of prevention related to losses if you do some work up front. And finally, our analysis and that of some of our customers show that about 15% is the proportion of liquids hauling spend that is targeted for overbilled and fraudulent investigation. So it is a significant issue, and there's a significant prize at the end. So why Enverus Business Automation? First of all, we do have the expertise. We have the intellectual capital within the organization to really support interconnectivity across the energy value chain. So we're positioned to really create an enterprise effect related to the technology that we have in place and essentially the technology that we're actually building on that network. We also invest a lot in technology and innovation. We really we have a relentless commitment to the energy industry. So we have over 4,000 E&Ps and 90,000 suppliers transacting over $190 billion through our online network. We think that we're a good strategic partner. We're investing over $1.5 billion in technology, when frankly other organizations are basically walking away from this space. And we're unique in that we address all four accounting areas. We're really the only network that addresses payable, receivables, JIBs, and revenue. So we think that we're in a very good spot to really help support our customers as they try to address these key areas. Audit intelligence, what is it? And really it's all built around this concept that prevention is cheap, recovery is expensive. So what the technology does is it identifies and isolates tickets and invoices at risk for overbilling and frankly fraud. And it can remove those offending documents from the workflow preventing approval and payment. So what you can do is you can stop the payment of overbilled invoices before it even happens, and even back to the field ticket level. So what are the benefits associated with this? Well, first, of course, first and foremost, it is to reduce costs. So you eliminate expensive, time-consuming recovery efforts. You lower LOE costs, you prevent loss of capital, and essentially you stop the overpayment from even happening. Second thing is you gain audit efficiency. Audits are extremely labor intensive. And what we've done is we've essentially automated that process. Through automation, through machine learning, what we can do is we can essentially have the system take the place of auditors or security personnel within organizations that are spending a lot of time and energy trying to resolve these issues. And then thirdly, you can identify preferred suppliers. You can rank your suppliers by those that are most likely to least likely to overbill. So you've got granular visibility into supplier behavior. And as a result, you can find out who your preferred suppliers are. So here's an example of prevention versus recovery and how it actually works in practice. So let's have an example of an overcharge of 2.5 million. Say we've got a significant size operator that's operating in West Texas, and they're putting a lot of water hauling through their system. And let's say there's about 2.5 million that is potentially overbilled. Well, on the prevention side, that $2.5 million, there's fees associated with the technology and services that actually support the prevention. And probably, we talk about effective prevention. There's probably 20% of tickets or invoices might actually slip through the process, depending on what your internal processes are. So worst case, essentially, there's a direct financial benefit of $1.75 million if you're in the prevention category. But if we look at how a recovery process goes, let's say that same $2.5 million, you only have the audit capacity potentially to audit half of that. And then if there's a 35% recovery factor associated with that, you're getting less of that overbilling back. And then finally, you do have to have third-party audit costs. So when the dust settles, the difference is between 1.75 million in prevention down to 300,000 on the recovery side. So a clear difference between where the advantage is associated with preventing. So Don Hover is going to show you the workflow, and essentially how it works is that we go through an anomaly detection process, where essentially we're looking at digital documents, be they field tickets, be they invoices. We have certain rules associated with analyzing that data, and then if it's caught essentially in that net, those algorithms figure out that there are issues. You can have control activities. You can suspend approvals. There can be permissions within the technology to essentially ensure that tickets or invoices are essentially, it's a bad word these days, but they're quarantined, that they're prevented from going further within the workflow. There's a risk assessment that can be undertaken, and Don's going to show you how you can group tickets logically into anomalies or cases in order to be able to take a holistic view of the processes of your given suppliers. Then there's case management. You can investigate essentially any attachments, any documentation, any other information associated with the case that you're finding can be managed. And then finally, you can release or adjudicate the case as it stands. You can send the tickets or invoices back to the supplier to be resolved. You can gather enough information, potentially even take action against the supplier to either get recovery. But what you can certainly do is ensure that those tickets and those invoices that are offending aren't automatically approved because people are just far too busy to even look at them. So we do have a case study here with Concho. Basically, the challenge was really the one that we've been talking about. They're looking to stop overbilling and fraud and better understand supplier behavior. So they invested essentially in their first in an internal version of technology that actually do the type of checking that is done with an audit intelligence, and then came to Enverus, partnered with us, and they are essentially one of the key drivers behind taking this technology, actually having it broaden within the broader reach of the E&P industry. And the thinking is the more operators that are part of this network and are using this type of solution, the more likely it is that, frankly, supplier behavior will be modified. And even using the technology, essentially the first pass at it, they were first of all able to go from looking at 20 to 30 suppliers annually to looking at virtually their entire fluid hauling fleet of 100 suppliers. They increased the number of investigated tickets to 20,000 per month. And again, this is when operations were in full flight. And over 5 months, they saved $1.4 million in overbilling charges on about $100 million of fluid hauling spend. Bill Anderson's been a great advocate for the technology, not only within Concho, but also within the broader industry. Bill's one of the principals behind the audit roundtable that meets twice a year and really has a bunch of operators sharing best practices in terms of how to resolve these issues. So very interesting case study. There's a more detailed copy of it that you can access through Enverus, and we would be happy to share that with you. So the key takeaways. Overbilling and fraud are significant in the oil and gas industry, and that's been, I think, reinforced by the establishment of the audit roundtable. Now we have over 50 operators that meet twice a year to do nothing but discuss issues related to overbilling. Audit intelligence, the technology automatically identifies and isolates tickets and invoices at risk for overbilling and fraud, removing those documents from workflow before payment. And that's the whole critical piece here. Prevention is cheap, recovery is expensive. You eliminate the expensive and very inefficient recovery efforts and lowers your LOE cost. Essentially, this saving goes right to your bottom line. Your cost per barrel, your lifting cost per barrel get lower as a result of undertaking this type of analysis. And finally, the solution also provides insight into supplier behavior. It makes your audit process extremely efficient. So that's really what we want you to take away from this presentation. And Don's going to show you how that actually works in practice. So I'll hand that over to Don.
Thanks, Dave. I'm going to switch over to my screen now. And just confirming you can see my OpenTicket screen.
Yep. That's good.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Dave. Great presentation. So what I'm going to show you is kind of just overall how that workflow works within the application that we have today. And so I've started out, I'm logged in as a ticket approver, and I'm showing the OpenTicket ticket dashboard. And so I have several stacks built, and one of the new stack creations that we can do is tickets that are under review. And so these tickets have been flagged by the audit intelligence engine to say these tickets have anomalies on it that are under review and should not be approved until they have been reviewed. So if I click on that stack of 9 tickets, these are all the tickets that are currently I have in my view that are being reviewed either by the audit team or by another team that are investigating these anomalies. You can identify different suppliers. I have 3 suppliers here that I want them to stop before if they detect any anomaly and prevent that approval of those tickets. So if I click on one, it won't let me actually confirm or approve these tickets until they've been looked at and reviewed and either disputed because they're in violation, it's a fraudulent billing or overbilling, or they'll release a workflow and I can go ahead and approve it. So obviously you can detect which suppliers that you're trying to focus on and quarantine. That's, as Dave said, kind of a bad word these days, but quarantine those tickets so they can't go forward into the process. And that's what I'm showing here. So let's go over to the audit dashboard. So if I have visibility into it, I'm going to go into the audit intelligence dashboard and show you where those anomalies are. So on the left-hand side are all my different anomalies, and I have what's called new anomalies. So these are ones that are just the engine has flagged some sort of issue with those tickets and have or invoices them and place them in the new category. So no one's looked at them yet from an investigation standpoint. You can look at historical information, so ones that have gone and they've actually been approved. I want to go back and actually perform audits on it. Maybe I started with the program after I started, have a bunch of data submitted for the past 6 months, and I want to look at it and just see if I want to go audit those suppliers. I have one pending, so that means I have an anomaly that someone's looked at and has put it into pending status, but it hasn't been thrown into a case yet. And then I have 2 released because they were resolved and released back to workflow. So that's kind of how the anomalies are managed, and I'll click onto it in here in a minute, but I'll talk about the cases. So there's a case management tool within here where once you have identified those anomalies and I want to investigate them and maybe go do an audit or maybe go dispute those tickets because they have issues with them, I throw them into a case. And so I have 2 active cases that my company is looking at. One I actually own, so you can put owners of those cases and assign those to people. Maybe it's an audit team and vendor audit, or maybe it's just a person that you designate to investigate these anomalies. And then I have 1 resolved. So let's look at these anomalies. I'll look at that 1 pending. And so I have different rules. Actually, I'm going to go back. Sorry, I'm going to look at the 4 new ones. We have different anomalies so far that we detect. Here's some examples. So late ticket submission. So we have a rule that says if any ticket is submitted 90 days after service, I want to flag it because I want to make sure it's actually a valid ticket before I go ahead and approve it. So this is it's a simple one. It's 90 days back from the service being performed. They just submitted it. I have a 24-hour billing, both by the truck and by the driver. So on a hauling ticket, we identify what truck is being used in the hauling activity and who the driver is. So then we can start looking across tickets and actually see, for example, this one is 3 different tickets, but they're all for the same driver, George Springer, for all you Astro fans. He was actually driving out here and he has billed over 24 hours of time in a single day. So obviously that's not possible. So there's actually something going on here. It's either a data entry problem or they're actually trying to put an extra ticket through the system. So we see a lot of that. So that's one thing Dave mentioned about getting with your suppliers and really helping with the data quality is these will quickly identify suppliers that are inputting the data. Maybe they're putting the wrong times or defaulting times on their tickets. This will actually flash up and show you if they're billing for the wrong times, or they're actually intentionally trying to sneak tickets through to get extra money. So it's kind of how the anomalies work. So 24-hour billing, 24-hour truck, late submission, and we have up to 12 rules currently that we run the engine on, and we'll flag those as different anomalies. I'm gonna go back to that 1 pending late submission type. It's for this oilfield services suite supplier, and I know that I've got a case that I actually have built for that supplier. So I want to group all their tickets that I'm investigating into 1 case. So what you can do is you can either create a new case, and I can pick 1 or more anomaly. I could have went and picked all 4 of those anomalies in the first page and created a new case, or I know I have an existing case that I'm working on for this particular supplier, so I'm just going to add it. So you just add case, and I'm going to add it, and you start typing, and it'll bring up the list of cases that I currently have, and I'll say it's for this 24-hour violation case, and I will save it. So that moves it out of the pending status, and it'll actually move over to the case. So if I open up my one case, that 24-hour violation, click on it, I can see that it has 3 different anomalies, and these anomalies may have more than one ticket associated to them, such as this has the 3 tickets. I can add comments, so as I'm going through and I find different information about it, I can go ahead and add a new comment. Also investigating, if I could spell, over late submission. And it'll add it to the journal here. So it's keeping a journal of the case entries here. Then I can go ahead, and the kind of options I have is if I want to resolve this case, so I have a resolution, I can click the resolve. On historical cases, I can do the settle. So if I did go back and recovered a certain amount of money based on the audit, I can click settle, and I can start capturing the recovered amount. So then I can start doing reporting on how much money did I actually save on my audits. But but the real thing, prevention is cheap and recovery is expensive, is I want to resolve this before everything gets paid out. So I'm going to go ahead and hit resolve, and my options are, I can either release all tickets back to workflow. So I looked at it and I go, this is just someone that didn't put the data in correctly, and I looked at the backup and it was actually valid tickets, so I can release those to workflow. I can dispute all the tickets back to the supplier. So I don't agree. I do agree that they tried to slip an extra ticket in, or it's for too much time. So I can go ahead and click that dispute tickets. I can give it a resolution code. So you can identify that they need to update their documents and resubmit it, or I'm going to dispute documents. And you can put a comment in there. Suspect overbilling, and resolve. So 3 tickets were disputed, and 2 tickets failed to dispute. And the why it failed to dispute is because they were already in the approved status, but they're still flagged along with that. But the 3 tickets were disputed that were still in the workflow. Okay. So I'll go back to my dashboard here. So now I don't have any. 2 were resolved now, and 1 is still being investigated. And then those 7 released because I disputed those tickets back to the supplier to fix up. All right, and I've already mentioned the historical, so we can load back historical data. So it doesn't have to be just ongoing. If you're using the system already, we can load up all your historical, and we start doing a historical look back to see if you want to do an audit and build a case to go settle and recover that amount of money. All right, so I think that's a quick view through how we can stop tickets and invoices from being approved and paid out because we put them under review. We show you kind of how we group those into anomalies, and those anomalies then can be created into cases, investigated, and resolved. So you can quickly run through and identify what suppliers are overbilling or unintentionally overbilling you. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Dave, and we'll talk about next steps.
Thanks, Don. Yeah, well, thanks very much. So we've taken you through the presentation and the solution overview. What I'd like to do now is hand it over to Susie and see if we've had any questions throughout the presentation. If you are interested in finding out more, however, you can contact your local Enverus account representative. You can email us at businessdevelopment@enverus.com, or visit our webpage and have a better understanding of the overall Enverus business automation family. Susie?
Awesome, Dave. Thank you. Great job, Don. Our first question here is, can you tell us a little bit about reporting that is available with the solution?
Yeah, there's really 2 levels of reporting. There's the essentially an overall view of essentially supplier ranking. So, and this is really more appropriate on the historical view, where you'll be able to see how many suppliers have submitted how many field tickets and what the percentage of anomalies were, and frankly where they rank. and then the also the amount of spend, which is potentially at risk associated with that. So that's kind of a high-level view. Within the actual application itself, Don, it also ties into the in the OpenTicket and OpenInvoice reporting, correct?
That's right. Yeah. So all the ticket and invoice search reporting, you can add the reporting to report on these anomalies.
Yep.
Okay, another question. If we have a lot of quarantine tickets, that creates extra work to review. Is there a way to minimize this?
Yes, there is. Actually, we've just released a new feature which allows you essentially to only quarantine tickets associated with given suppliers. So what you can do is you can say that and this is a very typical common practice with our customers, is that you take a look at your entire, in this case, water hauling fleet. And by the way, we are going to be broadening it out to incorporate other service types. But you can look at your whole water hauling fleet and decide there are 3 or 4 that look pretty suspect based on their ticket submission history. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to isolate tickets from those suppliers to be the ones that are quarantined, and I'll resolve those issues first, and essentially figure out that who are the ones that are most likely to be the most egregious examples of overbilling. And then what you can do is once you have those issues resolved, you can broaden the list of suppliers, and we find that this certainly helps from the standpoint of managing that kind of volume of tickets. Because certainly in some cases, it might take an effort to go back and retrain suppliers on some data entry challenges that they might be having. But we've got a fully capable team. Honestly, we've structured a team that understands that these are the issues that are going to happen. Pardon me, as we actually roll out this new technology, and from supplier support and engagement, and even working with audit teams or working with accounts payable people, we have a services staff that can actually help with that. Thanks, Susie.
Okay, this is a great question. Does the Audit Intelligence service work behind the scenes with our use of OpenInvoice, OpenTicket, or is it going through a workflow or process? So basically like starting with OpenTicket, then filtering through Audit Intelligence, then OpenInvoice. What does that look like?
No, this is actually a very interesting feature of this technology. We've leveraged a piece of technology called Kafka, and this is essentially it takes what's called streaming data. So as data is fed into a system, it has a very complex engine that allows it to essentially sort and sift through data, and all the anomaly checking which is undertaken is actually undertaken the instant that the document hits the OpenInvoice, OpenTicket system. So what that means is that there's no extra workflow step. The system has already identified the fact that there are issues. And honestly, this Kafka engine, it can handle, frankly, thousands of times the type of volumes that we're getting with OpenInvoice and OpenTicket. It's essentially used for real-time data analytics, so it is extremely powerful. So essentially, yeah, there's no difference. There's no change to your OpenTicket, OpenInvoice workflow, but it's behind the scenes, it's identifying where there's issues related to overbilling.
Awesome. Okay, this next one is a good one as well. If electronic field tickets are not used, does the solution review invoice detail?
Yeah, yes, it will. And by that, I mean that right now it is actually focused on ticketing, because that is where where the industry wanted us to actually focus on first. But over the course of the third quarter here, over the course of September, October, we are looking at broadening out beyond simply water hauling services, and we are also looking at checking invoices. So you won't have to have OpenTicket necessarily to be able to take advantage of the auditing capabilities within the application.
What is involved to set up or integrate Audit Intelligence if I'm an existing OpenInvoice customer?
Don's had the most experience with that, so I'll let him answer the question.
So the nice thing about that is it is a module of OpenInvoice. So really it's just permission based. You just have to have the permission turned on to be able to see the audit dashboard and assign users to whatever roles you want them either view, or they can take actions on the cases. So it's really, it really isn't that much to implement it other than turning it on and adding users to do it. And then you want to do, what Dave said, is basically start analyzing the data. Don't interrupt your workflow, but start figuring out what suppliers you want to target, and then start quarantining or reviewing, stopping the approval of those documents before they get approved. So it's kind of a phased approach.
Okay, this is an interesting question. So what's the difference between what Pricebook does versus this solution?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and actually a really interesting one. So what Pricebook does, Pricebook validates whether or not pricing is accurate or as per contract terms. So if I have an invoice or a field ticket and I have a contracted price for a given good or service, Pricebook will actually validate, yeah, that's the price that has been charged for that good or service, and it is aligned properly with my contract. What Audit Intelligence does, it actually checks, quite honestly, the scope and quantity, and as well as ticket matching with OpenInvoice, it's saying, does the scope and quantity make sense? Does it really make sense that a driver could be billing me for 36 hours in a 24-hour period, or that certain drivers are consistently exceeding the Department of Transport limits? It looks like there's some fudging going on here associated with that. So that wouldn't be caught within Pricebook. So that pricing for that 36 hours might be definitely in line with contract terms, but it's not in line with, frankly, what makes sense or what's actually possible physically. So we're working, and actually the combination of Audit Intelligence and Pricebook is extremely powerful for companies, saying that, number one, we want to determine if what we're being billed for is accurate, either pricing or scope and quantity. And number two, it helps with automation. So if you've got more and more confidence that as digital tickets and digital invoices are coming in, that they're accurate, that they align with contract pricing, and they don't look like they're out of step with what's actually going on physically, then you have a lot more confidence in actually automating that process and putting a lot less burden on your accounts payable staff and also on your knowledge workers to have to review field tickets and invoices.
Excellent. Can you guys just speak to any technology requirements that might be needed for this solution?
I'll pass that to Don.
So no new technology. If you're running OpenInvoice and OpenTicket, that's all it's needed, because it's all built into the application. It's all hosted. So nothing new. You just need an internet connection and a browser to access it.
Awesome. So it's easy.
It's easy.
Easy, the easy button. We like the easy button. Okay. Any last questions from the audience? You guys just type those in. Got a couple more. Let's see. Let me see if I can read this right. Since the second part of water hauling is water disposal, can the two be cross-referenced?
Yeah, absolutely, and that is actually one of the tests. We didn't get into all of the algorithms that we use to validate whether or not there's alignment or that there's potentially issues associated with it, but we do track within OpenTicket the saltwater disposal ticket number, and we also track loads that have been shipped. And what we can do within Audit Intelligence is actually determine, are there not only issues with ticket values or suspicious timing around that, we can also validate whether or not there is some suspicion around the saltwater saltwater disposal documentation and shipping. So we can look at saltwater disposal ticket numbers and say that, wait a sec, this doesn't make sense. There could be phantom loads associated with people essentially faking the fact that they actually undertook fluid haul. So yeah, we've built that into that, and certainly credit goes to Concho and Bill Anderson and his team with all the work that they've done around really looking at potential patterns of fraudulent behavior.
Yep. And just to add on to that, Dave,
Yep.
Within OpenTicket today, recently an enhancement was made where not only do we capture the disposal ticket number, but the disposal location, and they can be validated location disposal locations. And we actually don't allow now, you can turn off to where they can't submit the same disposal ticket number for that location more than once. So we're eliminating duplicate disposal tickets. And then as Dave said, with further on in audit intelligence, then you start evaluating, does that disposal load actually match the hauling load, you know, in different information around matching up the hauling ticket to the disposal ticket.
Okay, this next one is interesting. It's kind of building on the water hauling, but do we have the ability to track and audit oil trucking, pickup volumes, delivery volumes, et cetera?
Short answer is not yet. And we've, and actually that's as much a function of really OpenTicket as audit intelligence. And one of the challenges that we found with oil hauling is that really it's not a relationship where there's not a document transfer between a supplier and an operator. There's a third party involved, and that's basically the sales point. So you've got truckers that are hauling fluids from a collection point to the sales point, and really the relationship in terms of validating fluid volumes is between the sales point and the supplier. Now, of course, all that's reconciled back to the operator, but in that case, you've got kind of a triangle of entities that are involved with that. So we still think that there is an opportunity to ultimately automate that process, but it's more complicated. And what our customer base has told us is that they would rather solve some other issues first. But yeah, certainly something that we're looking at.
Okay, we're getting a couple of questions here on the types of tickets. So for clarification, the service currently only works for water hauling tickets and invoices. Is that correct?
Done.
As it stands today, but we're expanding that to other services such as roustabout services and other ticket. And Dave says moving also into the invoice, and you know, trying to eliminate duplicate invoices, not just by invoice number, but other attributes around invoices, such same service date, same dollar amount. Doing a lot of trying to highlight duplicate billing on the invoice, and then expand out the ticket types to do it.
Great. Do you have an estimated timeline or expected timing on when some of these other roustabout and other ticket types would be available?
Work is being undertaken on that right now. So
okay.
Really, it will depend on essentially the development cycles. But yeah, the work is underway on the contract labor analysis. And some of the other analysis that we've talked about is shortly behind it. So we're hoping that well, certainly we're hoping by the end of the third quarter that we have contract labor.
Excellent. It looks like based on our questions that we have a roustabout audit capability is on a couple of people's wish list. So that's good news.
Yep.
All right. Any other final questions, guys? These are all really great. So thanks for firing them off to us. Going once, going twice. All right. It looks like we are finished with questions. And if you guys have questions after the call, Remember, you can reach out to your account executive. You can email us at businessdevelopment@enverus.com. You can also visit the URL that we showed a little bit earlier. It's the Audit Intelligence landing page. We've got a video overview of the solution, got all kinds of good stuff there if you want to learn more. So with that, we'll say goodbye for now, and look for the replay link in your email inbox. That should probably be there tomorrow sometime. So thanks a lot for joining us, and we hope that you guys stay safe and well and have a good rest of your day. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.